So, good evening and hello. Today we are going to talk about hypers. And I'm thinking that we are doing a session that's kind of through the stakes. So, first of all, we are going to start from the lowest of low. So, these hypers, these are 9 max hypers all. And the first level you can play 9 max hypers is 1.5. And after $15 level, it starts to get quite sketchy what games run like. $30 games run only at peak times. Well, so hello to Kaleon, Danita, and Christian. Actually, I'm going to get the Twitch chat open as well. Wonder if I can. Where I can get it the nicest. And in here, this is the first hand we played pretty much. And as we noticed that in these games, we can be quite sure that there will be people going for broke with hands that they shouldn't. Like here was an open from early position and there was a player calling with 9 jack off. And then the player that called with 9 jack off, actually with about 15 big blinds, this is even a profitable shove. And it's for way the easiest way to play the hand. And there was a crazy Formula 1 race today. I didn't watch it, but perhaps you could tell me what made it so crazy. But so in these games it's going to be that if you are going to play nitty in hypers, you are going to find out that the bigger boys are pretty much eating your blinds, and then they are making it really hard for you to make money. And one of the good spots to get money is by actively stealing from other opponents. Good evening to Kauris as well. And now I'm having multiple tables on the top left corner. Actually, I'm going to register for 2 more as we finished quite early from the, or we will finish this one early as well, I presume. And in here, I think that it's going to be marginally better to min raise than shove. Even though we are left with only 12 chips, we are going to get more fold equity by a small raise. There will be people that will misread our stacks, and there will be another opportunity for them to misread on the flop when we are betting the rest of the chips in. Of course, if you are playing a lot of tables and you are sometimes min raise folding with a short stack, it might become quite expensive. But and in here, when player bets big, I don't believe that they are going to have the best hands. Like with the best hands, they are going to. So I'm thinking that with ace king off, I'm going to be guaranteed a flip pretty much. And when they are having kings, I'm almost never dominated by their ace hand, or I'm never dominated by their ace hands, but I think that in general I will be the one dominating a lot of their aces. Like even ace king usually doesn't play as a huge race. So I'm moving some of the. So I'm playing a bit more tables. Right now I'm having 6 tables running, and I'm playing a bit of a more tables even during this through the stakes, so that we can see all the different stages of the games. And I think that it's best done if I'm just playing a bit more tables at once. Räikkönen has said that beer helps. If that isn't the Finnish saying, I don't know what is. In here, actually, when we are having just 4 big blinds, it's going to be quite interesting. I don't think that it's still going to be a call, but it's going to be close with with a hand like 6-7 suited, when we are going to get quite a good price for our call. But with ICM, I think that we just require a bit too much equity there. A really needy player, like 35 hands, and he hasn't found a single hand that he likes before this. And if he would have been an aggressive player or a regular player, I would have gone all in with the King 8, King 9 suited. In here, I think top pair should be good enough against this tight, or against this fishy looking player. And Calleon says that a lot of changing situations and happenings. That's pretty interesting, as usually Hungary's Grand Prix is the most boring Grand Prix, as there are practically no ways to overtake on the track. So in here, even though we lost the lost the main pot, we still won more from the side pot. With ace-4 suited, we are going to go for it. So in these games, it's all about finding the good balance between being aggressive and growing your stack, and also finding a balance on not to be reckless. And it's probably harder than it sounds, because there are pretty good spots to be reckless, or there are a lot of spots that you can get quite restless with. And Creampop87, hi, where can you learn more about ICM on the Twitch chat? That's actually a good question. One good tool to study only ICM, especially if you are playing 9max games, would be ICM Explorer. And ICM Explorer would be free for if you only want to study the 9max structure. But if you want to study other structures, then I think it's a it's a software that's paid once, and I think it was $25 or something like that. But that's the first tool to pretty much look about ICM. And if I'm going for a small primer on ICM, and why do we require ICM, it's practically that if we would have a tournament structure that you could get exactly the amount of money out of the tournament as you have chips. Like if we would have a tournament structure where the winning player will take all of the chips away, or will take all of the prizes away, then we are going to have a structure that we don't require ICM. In sit and goes, we mostly require ICM because in these games the money is leaking out of the structure. Like if you are just the third last player to get eliminated, you are going to still get money. So, and if you are second to last player eliminated, you are still going to get money. And for example, in these games, like if you are just getting to the top 3, you are guaranteed at least 20%. So getting to the top 3 actually awards 60% of the prize pool. So this is a game that will have a lot of ICM effects going on the bubble. And when we are going from there, then from 3 to 2-handed, we are awarding about 20%, because there are like the stage is only 10%, but you are getting 10% when you are getting second, and from first to second there is no ICM, as winner will take all the rest of the chips. Yeah, Danita already put it in our chat, and that's a good tool to think about, just ICM. And if you're marking some hands, we can go through them on ICM Explorer later on, or post all of these games so you can see. It practically gives you the risk premiums of different situations. And as Kauris says, our moderator was streaming yesterday, And then he asked from one final table that, hey, do you guys know what's ICM? And then someone answered him that, isn't it some kind of an ice skating brand? And that's generally a final table that you don't want to put that much pressure on opponents. But for ICM, it's basically a way to calculate how much your stack is worth and what kind of a risks you can take. And when you are understanding ICM, it's going to be that all of the players are going to be bound by ICM somewhat. But if you are thinking about the pressure you can apply to your opponents, for example, in here, when we are having a big stack, it's going to be an excellent place to shove as these two guys, they cannot call me too wide because they are going to risk a lot of equity as there are three players that are going to be way smaller stacked than they are. And then the one sitting out player, it makes the pot even juicier. Unfortunately, I didn't win the pot, but also I didn't risk that much because I'm still going to be the largest stack and I'm still going to be the stack to beat. In here, it's interesting in a way because this guy is going to get eliminated so often. And when he gets eliminated, I'm going to skip big blinds. So that's going to be a position that, in general, when we are from UTG, we want to shove with a wide range. But if there is a situation that we might skip the big blind, so we are getting like 1/3 of the price for the normal orbit, then I'm going to tighten up my ranges considerably. But basically it's also that when ICM bounds both of you, if the other guy doesn't understand ICM, he will he will do calls that will be too wide. And in here this might look like, wow, there's one guy limping, so this is going to be a good place to shove. But no, it isn't a good place to shove because when we are going to do wide shoves from the small blind, usually the money comes from fold equity. And when there is a player that's already all in and we can't, like, there is nothing we can do to remove the player from the pot, we are getting zero fold equity and like a hand that's as weak as Queen 7. When we are risking our whole stack if the other guy calls, but we are never going to get the pot by just the big blind folding. It's going to be a situation that we need to tighten up considerably. In here, it's going to be a nasty spot. I think that we need to wait for the next hand, but generally I don't like when stacks are going to get that tight. And it pretty much screwed me over when the blinds went up at that exact point. Because when the blinds went up at that exact point, I can't min raise anymore. And stream is stopping quite frequently. We are going to have a technical break after these $1.5 games are going to complete. And Danita said that he would limp there off and his big blind is passive. The problem there is that with Queen 7, it will be profitable only on the rare occasions that we can either get the big blind to fold. So, and if we are getting the big blind to fold, we are going to risk more chips than post flop. Crap. I don't have time bank there and I need to remember it. Okay, I didn't fold a good hand, so that's good. And Kauri asks that which is better, Spin and Go or STT Hypers? What's that for a question? There are different purposes for different games. I think that Spin and Ghost, they are still going to have their place in poker, as I believe that there are certain players that are going to be enticed to play poker because of Spin and Goes. And also I think that Spin and Goes are they are the game that mobile tournament poker needs, because those are going to be a game that you can play even if you have like 10 minutes of time to spare. You can play one or two of those games on your mobile phone. And because of the huge player pools, even if you don't have any tracking tools, you don't give that much you don't get to be at that much of a disadvantage. So in general, I think that spin and goes are going to have their place, but they are going to be a game that will be one of the hardest games to play professionally. Because of the added variance and because of the very high rake for the games. And there is a question on Grimpop87 that if you have a very small bankroll of $16, would you grind $0.25 45 and sit and go, or would you play something other? I think there are so many fishes that who just calls with any hands pre-flop. Do you have any tips for how to outplay those players who are calling anything? In I did a project on our website on how to make $5,000 out of $50. So with the project, I started with the 50 cent and 25 cent 45 minutes and 90 player games. And actually, if I would do the project right now, I think that the 9 player turbos are going to be really enticing games to start. But in those games that if you are thinking about what are going to be the main points in how to make money in the smallest stake games, there's practically that if players are calling with really wide ranges, you are going to make good money by playing a tight range of hands pre-flop and extracting maximum value out of your hands when you hit. And also, I don't remember whether any regs at the 50 cent games or 25 cent games. But one other point is that when regs on those games are likely really needy, and there is another point that if you are having a mix of players that are going to be very needy and a mix of players that are going to be really tight, then it's also that you shouldn't give nits big values. So it's like play tight against the players that are calling with everything and extract maximum value out of when you are hitting it good, and when you are not hitting it good or when you are not having good hands, just fold. And against the tighter players, against those players you can steal more because nits like to fold hands, so you should work with that. And in here, even if Hokias would have come in, I'm going to go for all in when Smyga is in the pot with me. And I need to remember that I don't have any time bank. So it's going to be, on those games, it's going to be that players in general are going to be really polarized, that there are either nits or then there are guys that are going to call anything. And also with the guys that are calling anything, you can also bet bigger for value, as usually the bet sizing doesn't matter that much for them. And for the our members that are having problems with Twitch, are you still having problems with Twitch? In here I'm thinking that should I go with this 6-jack suited or wait for the next hand. I'm waiting for the next hand and going with it pretty much always. It's going to be the pretty much worth the same. Or it's going to be like, when I'm thinking about Jack 6 suited, it's going to be pretty much an average strength hand, so it's really close to an average hand. I think it's a bit weaker than an average hand, so. And stream stopped one time, but now it works perfectly. Okay, that's good. Calleon did have also problems, so do you still have problems? Or if you don't, then we are moving to $3.5 games after this one. And I'm actually getting the link for I'm getting the link for the $50 to 5K project, because that's pretty much should be what you are asking about. And there are also my own feelings on stuff. So now that the games are finished, there could be a great pun. There's a project blog, $50 to 5K in 2 weeks. And spoiler alert, I didn't do it in 2 weeks, but I did do it after all. So I linked it up to the Twitch chat, and now we are going to $3.5 games. And as you saw on the first level of these games, we are going to see a lot of random players. Like the $1.5 games I think they are going to be quite beatable, and they're going to be a good place to start with hypers. And if you can replenish your bankroll, I think starting with a $100 bankroll isn't going to be a problem, and it should be enough for many players to start with. And even in $3.5 games, there are actually 0 players that I know from before, so should be interesting. And Crimpop87 said that he just restarted Twitch and it worked fine. Okay, that's great to hear. Nice green hair on a photo. Oh wow, there is going to be some time from my green hair. I lost a bet with Deija then, and I was living in Finland when we had the green hair. I did go to what's it called, a hairdresser school, and the girls there said had fun when the only order was that make it as bright as you can, and it can be as bright green as you can. So that's apparently that's something that they can't do very often. So, and Danita said that his biggest downswing on the $1.5 games is in 7,000 games was $90. Yeah, and it's going to be probably even less for Danita as you are going to get the points rolling. So there are going to be points that you are achieving, and there are going to be the VPP rewards. But if you are among top players, like if you are having 5% ish ROI, then it will be quite likely that you are going to encounter 100 buy-in downswing. So, but they are not going to be that something that happens that often. And Kauris84 said that this project is old before Spin and Goes. Players are a little better today, in my opinion. Most of those games are in MTT sit and goes, and I think that the MTT sit and goes they would be pretty much as good right now. So I think my ROIs in MTT sit and goes would be pretty close to what they were during the project. So I'm thinking that it's going to be quite likely, or I'm saying that I would think that it would be quite likely that I would probably, or like my ROIs would probably be quite the same, but the only question mark would be that would there be as much volume as there was when I think King Jack suited would be a hand that we could open from early, but not King Jack off. So it's going to be mostly on how much the games would be running. And as I said that I would probably right now I would start with 50 cent 9 max turbos. And I think that those games would run enough, or then I would mix something like 50 cent 9 player turbos and 50 cent 45 mens. And Krimpop asked that when you played from $50 to $5,000, how many tables did you usually play per day? There is a running count on or there is a blog post on every day. I think my best days were close to 500 games, or at least over 400 games. And the worst days were something like 150 games. And there's Christian asked on our chat that what's the best to do with VPPs? Take the cash, play satellites, or buy tournament tickets with it. I think the cash for tournament player, the cash bonuses are not worst way to. They are going to be the not worst way to use the VPPs. I'm thinking that the tournament tickets and the satellite hypers they are going to be the same value. So when the both of those options are the same value, it's going to be that usually you can get your money out of the satellites easier. So there's less variance in the satellites compared to. So there's less value in satellites, or there's less value in tournament tickets as there will be always a big variance MTT that you need to play before you are getting the money out of the system. And because of that, I think that the satellite hypers are usually the best way of making the FPPs to tournament dollars and then playing tournaments to make money. With Pocket 8s, this might look a bit unconventional, but I think that when we are having two limpers, we are going to have the best value option in here if we just shove, because there will be players that are calling with dominated when they are going to be dominated with ace-x hands, and it's going to be a hand that when there are two players and at least one player is a player that I really like to play against, it will be really often that when there is a UTG limper that's unknown and another guy that I have already marked as purple, I'm thinking that it's going to be a situation that if I'm betting small, we are going to get a big three-way pot. And with pocket eights, it's going to be if neither one of these players is trapping, pocket eights is going to be a profitable shove. And also, that's going to be a good idea, as well as Christian said that he likes to play the Sunday Storm satellites on Sunday with it. That's going to be a great idea because the Sunday Storm satellites are going to be the softest on Sundays. Like, if we are thinking about the Sunday Storm satellites, they are going to be the softest when people are going to play them to play in the Sunday Storm. Like at other points, there will be even decent players playing those satellites to like transfer their money from points to tournament dollars. And if Grimpop asked that, like, how many tables did I play at once during the project from $50 to $5,000, I played at most 40 tables at once. But I have played 45 tables also during a different project. But for something like Hypers, you are going to have less time to act per game, smaller time banks, and on average you are going to get shorter on tables. So, like, I have played 25 Hypers at once, and I'm pretty comfortable playing 16 to 20 Hypers at once. But also it's going to be like I'm going to be comfortable with pretty much double the amount on MTT sit and goes or 50-50s, which are the two easiest games to multi-table in my opinion. Green Pop said that he likes to play the 20 players 210 FPP Sunday Storm Satellite. I think that's a good option. So, and Green Pop said that they have shortened their regular table time bank as well, right? Yeah, but I think on regular tables, it's something like on Hypers, you are getting something like 6 seconds to act. So these tables are beeping a lot quicker than on regular speed tables. So in these games, you are going to get the action to you quicker because it's also a compounding change. Like the more players are going to, or the quicker players are going to get the notes that they should act, the quicker also the average table completes its rotation and the action comes back to you. So it's going to be a situation that we are always playing a bit quicker on a hyper turbo game. And in regular tables, it's going to be, I think the time to act on regular and turbo tables is going to be the same, but the regular speed tables are going to have longer time banks. And there is a good point that I think our admin Deja posted on the Twitch chat, that perhaps you should try to stack tables. Like you can watch on our YouTube channel. There are actually, I think there are 2 videos of me doing something like 25 tables on a live stream. Like doing one of those is going to be about 50-50s, and you can see there like what am I doing and how do I keep calm when there's a lot of action going on. Right now we haven't had that much interesting late game topics. It might be from the fact that we haven't gone to the late game that often, but right now we are playing the smaller part of our session, and I think we have like got one table in the money so far. So it it matters a lot less right now than if they are saving all the deeper runs to the higher stakes. It would be okay as well. In here, I'm thinking that the average stack depth is going to be around 10, and even this guy, even though he's looking like that it's going to be a big stack depth, it's going to be a situation that I believe that this guy is only having 10.7 anti-adjusted big blinds, and also one of the other points is that I'm getting way more fold equity against the guys that I basically with king jack off would pretty much need to call anyways. So by shoving there, I'm increasing my fold equity, and I'm only risking practically more against this Artem guy that I could raise fold against comfortably. I probably should raise fold against this VKI as well as his UTG +1 and Grimpop87 asked, do you play big tournaments as well, and have you won any big tournament or larger? I'm actually thinking what's my biggest win, because most of my four-figure cashes in tournaments have been by just finishing in the late stages. I think that one of the biggest ones must be a $54 deep stack on game something like 4 or 5 years ago. It was a four figs victory, but lately, like last year, I was in the top 27 in the Supernova free roll, when there is $1,000,000 in the prize pool and $100 for the winner. I was in top 3 tables twice during last year, so that's kind of I think once it was 4,500 and the other was 2,800 or something like that. So nice cashes, but I remember that I was pissed during either or after each cash, because it's so close that you could get so much more. And then I think we had a low limit MTT session. I think it's also on YouTube. I think during that one we had something like $2,000 on a 6max hyper. I think $25 6max hyper or something like that. And it was something like $2,000 for being third or fourth. Yeah, if I said 100, I meant 100k, so it's also the Supernova free roll. It's one of the tournaments with the wackiest price structure. I think you can get 5 figures only if you make the final table. And if you make the final table in here, how much do we need? $850. So you need 40% ish. It's going to actually be close against Boku. I think he's going to be one of the most active guys shoving from early on when the stack sizes are going to be low. So if that would be actually that might have been a call against Boku. Problem is that Queen 9 off, we are not far ahead of even, or we are like, the equities we are going to get are not going to get far over 40%, even if we are against a wider early position shove. But like the Supernova free roll, it's like 100k for the winner, but the final table is something like you start with 11,000 for the ninth place, then 22,000 for the eighth place, 33,000. So it's like a really heavy ICM structure, but it's really flat price pool compared to what's normally at stake in, like, every price pool jump in the final table is 11,000, except the heads up is for 12,000, I think. And Kauris, we have done 2 Hyper Turbo finishes. One was smaller, and I was 6th in there, and then there was one that I was 3rd or 4th. And Creampop87 asked that how long did it take for me to reach Supernova? That's actually a good question. That it didn't take me that long. That when I started playing mostly on Poker Stars, I did do Supernova for the pretty much from the first year. But before that, I didn't play on Stars that much. So I think that when I started playing poker again, it was something like in here. It's going to be a nasty spot against this Artem Pod, because if he knows ICM, we can add a lot of pressure against him if we shove there. But if he doesn't understand ICM, this is going to be a spot that we are going to have so huge disasters going on. Like in with sit and goes, it's pretty easy to rake high amounts, and pretty much the quickest supernova that I have done has been something like I have done it on April of the year without playing much on January. So, and the most VPPs I have done in a month are something like 70,000 or something. So I could have done it even quicker, but for the most VPP questions are probably good to ask from Kaleon, that's our coach that did Supernova Elite. That's 10 times harder last year, so he's the real VPP grinder. And I think he did something like 250,000 for his final month. And Christian said that I think for Supernova you have to play $15 games so the volume will be very high. If you play 50 sit and goes a day, you should get it. Yeah, that's basically, if you are thinking that you are going to play every day, that's usually something that you can't keep up. In here, I think that we can add a lot of pressure, and even though our hand is really crappy, with these stack sizes, it's going to be a pressure time most of the time. And if I know that my opponent can call me with something like King 7 suited, even he didn't think that long and he called me with King 7 suited. So it might be that against those kind of a guys I shouldn't shove with everything, but when it's going to be an unknown, I'm pretty much from the small blind. I'm going to be one that shoves against unknown players pretty wide, because it's usually a mistake that most of the players are doing in these games, that they are going to fold way too much when they are in the big blind. But for like something like if you are playing these hypers, you can play something like, if you are playing, or when I'm playing these, I can do, it depends on the session length, but I can do something like 60 to 80 games an hour. So if you would think about it, for someone to play 70 or 80 hours a month would be doing Supernova with $7 games. So it's like it's not impossible. Like I think the players that are playing the highest volume in the games are playing about twice as much as would be required for Supernova in sevens. And I think guys like this VKIN can be quite close of getting Supernova by playing only $3.5 games. And this is going to be a fun fact, but I think the smallest stakes that someone has played has been, I think, RS2013, RS2013. I think he played Supernova by playing just $1.5 50/50s. And before that, he played like $1.1 double or nothing. So I think he made Supernova with both of those. And that's going to be quite insane, as you are thinking that if you are good in if you are good in 50-50s, I'm thinking that you can start playing like $1.5 50-50s with something like $60, $50 to $60 bankroll, especially if you are starting off with normal speed games, and something like $120 for turbos. Fossana says that the site I play has 300 starting chips. Is there any reason to ever min raise and fold? Are you playing on full tilt? If you are playing on full tilt, then there is one point that there are no antes, so stealing has less of an impact. But I think that with 15 big blinds, there are going to be spots that you'll want to min raise and still fold. Like we are min raising and limping instead of just pushing or folding, because that way we can play more hands profitably and we can abuse our opponents more profitably. I think this must be a horrible call. Did I see it right that this VKIN called Boku's shove here with ace-4 suited? That's an insane call. That's something that we can review later on. But even I think on that spot, if Boku is shoving any two cards, the range to call is something like pocket eights plus, and ace king suited might be in there, but it's quite likely that ace king suited would be a good fold there. King 9 suited, it's going to be close. Looks like this guy, he played every game that I started on 3.5s, but it seems like he thinks that ICM is for skating. So, well, who knows? For someone to play all the games, it just requires for him to push the register button often enough. That's the way to get games starting. But for Fossana, it depends on like when there are no antes, and if there are no antes, there's like less profit in stealing a lot, but then there are going to be still some spots that you want to steal. And if there are antes, then there are going to be more spots that you want to min raise fold, because stealing becomes more important and getting an opportunity to play a wider range will be more important for you. When you get below 12 big blinds and regular sit and go, is it better to shove all in or raise? Yes, Kauris said that going all in is the easy way, but I think that with 12 big blinds we are still going to have decent options. So I wouldn't go all in with all the time when I'm having 12 big blinds. We missed the flop completely. I think that we are turning our hand into a bluff here somewhat, and now our bluff turned into a real hand, and we don't need to bet big in hypers to get our stack in for the we don't need to bet high amounts in a hyper to get all the stack in if we are three barreling, because usually even if you are taking it slow, you are usually getting your all the stack in anyway, even during the first blind levels. This guy I'm pretty bit on a edge on do I want to mark him or not. And maybe we can check the hand later. The king 8 suited, king 9 suited, okay. We can get it here. It's marked for review. In here with top pair we are going for it, and our opponent has 10-6 off. I raised like UTG +1. He flat calls me with 10-6 suited, and he reshoves me on an ace flop. Raise your hand if it makes any sense to you, because I can't find the sense in that. But there's like Fossana, there's also that when you are min raising to trap with kings, there are usually also there's going to be room. Sometimes there are situations that if you are min raising that you'll only want to trap. And it's basically if opponents are going to 3-bet a lot wider against you when you min raise, then there is a situation that you might want to only exploit their tendencies by just. And in here we are having a limped pot. With a limped pot I'm quite on the edge on do I want to bet myself or do I want to give my opponent opportunity to bet. And when it's a limped pot, even with a weak king, if an opponent is going to bet, it might be aces and I'm trapped here, but I just can't fold a king here. I don't think so. Oh, he limped with a better king. That's kind of interesting and nasty that he bet full pot with a good king there. That was something that was slightly unexpected. But for Fossana, like, if you are having a 15 big blind situation, usually it will be for the small to medium strength pocket pairs. Usually it's better to shove, and also something like small to medium suited aces are also going to be hands that are going to play really well if you are going to see all the cards. But as I tried to explain earlier, that there are situations that you can also use the hands that you are going to trap your opponents with. You can also use those hands to strengthen your min raise fold range. So when your min raise range is stronger, then you are also going to get some more folds, especially on opponents that have seen you trap with min raises before. Like when you are playing a lot with regs, they will get to know you as well. And if you are only min raising premiums, you are going to be very exploitable, and it requires that the player just looks your stats up on what have you done with certain lines. So, and if they are going to see only nuts with a certain kind of line, it will be so easy for your opponent to play against you in the certain spot. And for Kauris, I expected that with the 12 big blind situation, it's about effective stacks. And if it's about effective stacks, then it doesn't matter that if opponent is a big stack or a small stack. Or it matters in the 9 max context, but if we are talking about in general, then it doesn't matter. Then it doesn't matter that much. Is an opponent a big stack or a small stack? In here, we could limp, we could min raise. I think that min raising is going to be profitable against a tight looking player here. Like if opponents are folding to a small raise, if they're folding to more than about 42%, because of the antes, we are going to make money here by min raising any two cards from the small blind. And where did you learn which hands to raise pre-flop and when to blind steal and so on? It has been a pretty much, it's still a living process. That if you are asking about me what I'm doing right now and what I was doing a year ago, you would probably get a different answer. Different answer both times. So my ranges are, they are quite a living thing. That if I'm seeing that the whole population is playing or regs are playing a certain spot in a way that I think I can exploit, then I'm moving my ranges. Then I'm also looking for analytics that when I'm having more hands on a certain spot, I can also see that about like what type of hands have been really profitable in a certain situation. And Fosson asked that how useful would it be to be able to see your opponent's whole cards in the hand history after the game was done? Are you telling about only the opponent's whole cards that are like if you are talking about that we could see all the opponent's whole cards when the game is done, like even if they folded pre-flop, that would be huge. Then we could pretty much know. Then we wouldn't need a lot of hands to determine our opponent's exact strategies, and it would be huge, especially as I think that one of the best qualities that I have would be data analytics. And when when doing data analytics with poker, it's going to be hard because you don't see that many hands. So in certain spots that you are going to be talking about percentages. But if you are thinking like the current system that, for example, PokerStars uses, that you can get the hand history of your opponent that's been there on the river even when they muck their hand. I think that it's important, but it's still not going to be like, it's not going to be the difference between winning or losing. But I think for a player that is interested in what happens in here, this might look like pretty radical stuff, but I think that Boku would never shove a really solid hand here, so it's like always going to be a medium strength hand. In here, this guy is, I'm going to mark him certainly that I want to play against him later on. And Creampop87 asks that when I have pocket kings or aces on the 25-cent sit and go, I usually go all in preflop since I know that there are a lot of players that are going to call. In here with the king 7, I think that it's going to be, it's like king high is not going to win me that pot often enough, so I need to fold it. Hmm. I think that you are going to miss a lot of value because even though there are players that are going to call anything, if you are only shoving your best hands, I would bet quite a lot. And if you send me a reminder on the forum, like on the $50 to $5,000 session, I could look at the data because I have it in a different database on the micro stakes, and I could look on there that how much more often a general player folded to a shove than he folded to a small raise with different stack depths. Because I think that it's going to be a big mistake to be shoving the best hands, especially if you are having something like 75 big blinds of stack depth. And there's what's a note on Horin. It has been about ROI. It's probably quite an old note on him. And Fossana says that he plays on Bovada, where you can get the hand history of every player. I think that's pretty interesting. That you can get the hand history of every player, but you can't track players. I'm actually thinking that what would be better? Would it be better to get tracking on your opponents, or would it be better to get all of the hands printed in the hand history, even if you couldn't track players? Because I would think that for a player that's interested in data analytics, it would probably be that if you take note on the table, what happens there, it probably depends on how many tables you are going to play at once. But it would be really enticing, and I would think that it would be pretty close in value if you would get every hand posted to it, because then you could get really good stats on how different types of players are playing. So you could type players really accurately, and you could do some really impressive stuff data wise on what would be a really good range to play a certain situation. And Creampop said that even if it's the very first hand, I think that I don't have a lot of those situations, even though I played something like, I think, close to 2000, or it's something like 1000, 1500 low level multi-table SNGs. So there are not a lot of first hand all-ins, as you can probably imagine. And I'm still thinking that you are going to get folds so often that it's not going to be the most profitable way of doing it by just open shoving. And I think that it's not going to be most profitable by a long shot. So I disagree with Kauris84 a lot here. And Calleon says that I would probably try a min raise or limp with queen 6 off in Boku's shoes if I would want to play that. I'm thinking that shove isn't bad because players are they are usually folding too much, and B, there are so much money in the pot because these antes are going to be big. So with big antes, a lot of players on the table, it's usually quite a good idea. Because this guy has folded so much, I don't limp this. Limping would be probably nicer against a certain type of player, but if I'm having a player that folds really often, then I'm pretty enticed to min raise here. How come you went all in with ace-3 there? Grimpop, could you tell me the table? We can look at those hands later on in the session with the analytics toolkit. Toolkit that I use if you are just asking about the hand, and I can mark it. But usually there is so much going on that I don't remember on which table a certain hand was played, especially if it's not a remarkable hand in my mind. So just tell me what table was it on, so then I can probably find it a bit quicker. With the ace-3 hand, I think it's quite of a standard hand because there will be so many players that are going to be low stacked. Oh, this is like what percentage the hand belongs to. I think that in this case it's also going to be that if you are shoving, it's going to be the different type of hand that would be good. If you are calling, the rankings are also going to change, like what kind of a range you are against. And then there are also going to be like, are you taking post flop into account at all? So, like, if you are asking what's like the top 5% of hands, I'm thinking that there is at least 7 different ways to calculate the top 5% of hands. And if you are saying the tables, please say the tables like the top right, top left, because I don't remember them by the number. I'm remembering them by where the tables are. And that's one of the good points when you are tiling your tables. When you are tiling your tables, you can make use of your spatial part of your brain into connecting, like, I am having this kind of a hand or this kind of a situation in this kind of a spot. In here, I think that shove against a general opponent might be profitable, but against a general opponent, min raising is probably even more profitable. So this is one of the spots that, if even if you are thinking that, like, wow, I'm going to get something like 0.03% against a player that will fold too much, but then I would be risking all of the stack, and I can get it with, or I can usually get the pot with less risk to myself. And Fossana says that, how do you exploit players that are only playing push fold Nash? That's a good question, because Nash equilibriums are, the general idea of a Nash equilibrium is that you can't exploit the other player by moving away from the Nash equilibrium. So if a player is playing push fold Nash, when he's on the small blind, there's pretty much nothing I can do to exploit them, because they are going to tell me what kind of a game they want to play. If they are shoving, they are telling me that they want me to play only a push fold game. So they can decide then that, okay, they want to play a push fold game, and if they are playing a push fold game, I think that I'm going to win a bit on the when I'm on the big blind. And on the other side of things, when I'm at the small blind, I'm going to exploit the players, like, they are going to think that now that he's pushing, I'm going to call him with Nash equilibrium, and then he's not going to make money with his push fold game, and I'm going to get a few chips to myself with my perfect big blind game. Doesn't work that way, because then I'm going to be limping, I'm going to be min raising, I'm going to use all the tools, like the Nash equilibrium. It only applies to a game where your only opportunities are either pushing or folding. But if the other player who can then choose the game does look at other ways to play the game, your Nash push fold equilibrium doesn't apply to that situation anymore. In here against Boku, I wonder. This probably wouldn't be a good shove, but I'm thinking about, or I don't remember how Boku plays. Now I say this is weird. I thought that Boku would be, when I'm limping, that he would be either pushing or folding, and I think that when he raises so small, without position, he's going to have a great hand here. Like, I'm thinking of something like ace-jack minimum. Let's see how many tables. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 39. I could do that, but I couldn't do it with playing half of the games in Hyper Turbos. But I can sometimes stream a 40 tabling session if you want to. It's usually just it's usually just going to be it's usually just going to be a session that I won't be speaking then, because I remember, even though when we did the 25 tabling session, even though my limits at 50/50s were at 45 tables, it becomes really hard to speak during the same time. And Crimpop says, do you play cash game as well? Nope. I don't play cash games, and I pretty much probably suck at cash games. I think I'm better right now in those games, and if I would start playing cash games, I would need to do quite a lot of work in the deep stack situations, that what to do when I'm at 100 or 200 big blinds deep effectively, because those are situations that even if you are playing like something like 45 mens or 180 mens, you are playing generally against weaker opponents, and you are also playing the 75 big blind game or 50 big blind game quite a short amount during the tournament. And Christian said that he played 60 games of 80 and 45 men. Yeah, that's sick. That I can agree with. So Boku is a better multi-tabler than I am. I think I marked the ace-3 hand, but I didn't, because even though I thought that it was a standard hand, I think that it's probably good to mark. And in here, when he shoves, it's going to be an easy Nash call. Like with Boku, I'm going to expect that he's going to be relatively close to Nash equilibrium. So I'm going to call him with pretty close to the Nash equilibrium here. So let's go up in stakes. And this is going to be the final one. And Kauris84 says that maybe he uses all the automatic systems but not buttons. Even if you are using something like you are doing table management by yourself, or if you are using some software to do table management, even clicking all the tables, even if they are in a stack, it's going to take some time. And I think the biggest problem time-wise is analyzing the situations. And it's going to be like, I could probably do the major situations at the time if I would be 60 tabling. But then if something goes wrong or something that takes more time to think about, then I would be in trouble, and I probably couldn't, even with 40 tables of 50/50s, I'm still going to have enough time to catch up if I'm taking more time into one single decision. And Fossana says that I have played nearly 4,000 sit and goes. That's quite a nice volume. I think something like 3,000, 4,000 games. It kind of shows you if you are a winning player or not, especially if you are using something like Hold'em Manager or Poker Tracker, where you can see your equity adjust, or I think it's equity adjusted or estimated value adjusted ROIs. Then you can pretty closely see that where you are. And we are seeing that when we were at the first table, there were like four people that were playing with really wide ranges, and right now we are having one player that we can clearly say that this guy we like to play against, and then there are like two. I think these are going to be among the two best players in these games. Like Abaron and LA Rusman are going to both be among the players that I respect a lot in these 9 maxes. I don't even know how many sit and goes I have played. I know that I have played over 100,000 sit and goes, but and probably I have played over 100,000 and less than 200,000. I'm actually not even sure about that. I'm not actually even sure about 200,000. I might at least be quite close to 200,000 right now. I probably should need to check it. I think it was something like 70,000 games, when I had about 70,000 games in Hold'em Manager 1, that I said that now I have played poker till game over, because Hold'em Manager 1 couldn't show me the graph of all games. It throws a out of memory error or something when it tries to draw all the games. But so we can see that these games are going to get tougher the higher you are getting. And even in these games, something like this "Don't Trust Me" guy, he seems to be that he could be a reg as well. And it's also interesting to see that there's a player that I have marked as a player that I want to play against. That is a Supernova, and I think that we are going to see why when he's shoving like 22 big blinds on the first levels. And when there is a player that's a Supernova and a player that you want to play against, those are the best players. Those are the best players, and those are the players you certainly want marked. Christian, the problem there is that Sharkscope mostly sees my PokerStars games. It misses majorly of my full tilt poker games, it misses my games on other sites, and it misses almost all of my spin and goes on PokerStars. Actually, I think that even on PokerStars I'm closer to 130,000 right now. So I think that's quite a few hands of poker. Pocket fives, it's going to be, even though we are having more than 12 big blinds, even like with 600 chips I would have shoved this rather than played it any other way. Because if we are having an opponent just flat calling us behind, it's going to bring an ugly situation to us. And if we are seeing all the 5 cards, there is practically nothing that our opponents behind us can do. I think that if you are only interested about strategy and in these games, I'm thinking that you are doing better if you are observing LA Rusman than if you are observing Boku. Because even though Boku plays a lot of volume, I don't think that he's like the absolute top reg in the games. So I think there are players that are having a better strategy for these games than Boku does. But we can see that when we got from 1.5s where there were no marked regs for me, 3.5s, there were some players that I have marked that I'd like to play with them later on as well. But when we are going to $7 games, there are certainly a lot more regs that I could tell you about, that this is a reg, this is a reg. And when we are at $15 games, we can notice that if we are getting one player that I know as that's probably a player that I want to play against, it's going to be a good game, and if there are a couple of unknowns, it's going to also make it a bit better. The guy looks tight at open, so I'm folding even pocket fives. I don't think that with pocket fives I would have any fold equity there. And Kauris says that my all-time games are around 20,000. And he has just started poker. Yeah, but your games are, I think they're mostly MTT sit and goes, so you have something like 50 hands average per game. Actually, if you're having 50 hands average per game, you are probably hitting the million game or million hands played. And I think million hands played, that's quite a lot of poker. And I don't think that in here we could actually. No, there's just one player and he seems solid behind us, so I think shoving here is going to be better than calling us. I don't think that we are going to get opponents behind us. Doing that many stupid stuff if we are just flat calling that one. Yeah, it's interesting. So like Deia is a girl, and when she was interviewed for how many games she has played, they left the 0 out of the number because they thought that she had made a typo there, even though she's, I think, 3 times Supernova already and has played a crap ton of games. I think that's actually Deia is probably quite close to six-figure games as well, like more than 100,000 games. But at least Deia knows what has been her biggest win in MTTs. Like I have got a lot of four-figure results that have not been victories. In here with pocket with king queen off, we are going to get it in against a lot of hands that we are dominating. And this is again a spot that people in general, they are min raising a lot of their highest value hands, and they are not min raising the enough of the crappiest hands, so they are shoving too much in those situations. And when I have quite a good idea on what kind of a range does my opponent have, then it's going to be quite easy to play against them in a spot like that. And these are going to be the final games for today. Let's see, in here I'm all in against a reg, so let's see how it works out. Reg shoved king jack suited. Actually not sure, that's probably a plus EV shove, but it's probably not a shove or that's like a plus EV Nash shove, but I don't know if it's. In here we are going to try to extract value when we are having two pairs against this opponent. Unfortunately, we didn't get any value out of her. Okay, we are hitting the money in the $15 games, and it seems pretty good for us right now. That we are getting the big stack, and the problem with the big stack in here is practically that we are against a player that I want to play against, and when I'm against, like, if there would be two regs on the table, I would probably just shove ace-8 off and be really happy about it. But if there is a player with the second largest stack that is likely going to call too much, I'm going to take a safety play most of the time to try to limit my risk against the big stacked player and trying to just get the chips out of him or her without taking the biggest risks possible. I don't believe that my opponent is going to hit anything there. And I think my king high is going to be good. And if when he updates to a half a pot bet sizing, I think that now he's having something, he or she or whatever. In here, actually, I misread the stack size. I thought it was 1296. And I thought that I'm going to. And there's like only one. When there is a three-way pot, there is 6 ways it can go. And the only really crappy way it can go there is that the smallest stack wins and the largest stack comes second. Because then I'm eliminated without the money. And all of the other 5 options how the hand could go. And when I was ahead, it was something like I'm getting about 90% of not having a catastrophe here. But it was a 10%er, I'd say. Pocket deuces, bottom right, I would fold. Let's see if we are getting the hand here. I think that with pocket deuces, it's going to be, when the average stack size is going to be so low, I'm thinking that it's going to be pretty profitable. Pretty profitable situation. And when we are the smallest stack, then we are not having enough left. And we got it in twice as a dominated. Like, we don't have enough stack size to go for a pretty keeping the pot small type of game, and also min raise folding would affect us a lot more. So that's like doubly crappy because it now limits our options on how to play against this player, and it also always hurts when you are losing a big stack. When you reach the final table on SNG, do you play tighter when not ITM, or do you loosen up? It depends on the game. In general, I don't think that either option would be. Or it's how to explain it the easiest. Usually, when you are in the bubble, it's going to be the situation that you should be most careful with your chips. But it's a two-way street. Opponents also need to be most careful of their chips at that exact moment. So it's in a way that I'm going to be loser in raising and in playing for chips aggressively, but I'm going to be tighter in relation to calling and spots that I can't apply any pressure anymore. In here, even though we are the third largest stack, It's actually really bad situation. I think that we are having fold equity here, and because I think that we are having fold equity, it's going to be the reason why this turns into a shove rather than a fold. It is like good shove, good call, good game, even though I didn't win. And Callan says that seems like really active Twitch chat. Yeah, it has been active today. That's always great. I don't mind which way we get comments here, but it's always great that when you get comments, because then the stream is always going to be easier to hold. And if you like what we are doing, please follow us on Twitch, subscribe to our YouTube channel, then you are also going to see, then you are also having a chance to see whenever we are having new stuff coming up on YouTube. And register to our forum. We are having awesome community and awesome chat going on in the community. So that's it. Time for a small, that was probably a time for a small advertisement. And we are in the bubble again with the smallest stack. I don't like it that much, but I don't like being the smallest stack. I like to be the big stack and to abuse opponents. I don't think that I think that LA Roosman somewhat dropped the ball there. I'm thinking that min raising in his spot would be better play than shoving, as we are going to be so close in stack size. Now he's risking elimination against an opponent that probably is kind of unknown, and I don't think that he's going to get that much improved fold equity, so thank you. Thank you. And now that we are having less tables, I remembered earlier on when Deya said that someone said to her in the chat like condom. That's the most random chat ever. But I think that there are like, I don't know about it, but Kyberi, when he's playing pot limit Omaha, he says that he's getting a lot of chat that is like, hey man, are you streaming? Really cool, and like, how are you doing? And when are you streaming again? And on the other hand, when I'm playing, I'm getting really rarely that I remember once or twice that somebody on the table has given me a compliment or something, but there have been a ton of times when there have been players that are starting to berate me and shout at me on the table. So there is a lot of aggression in the poker player chat. And there was an interesting research subject, and someone, I think they researched Halo, like the game that you are having voice chat going on all the time, so they could think about, or they could get the gender of the players on the chat. And they noticed that the players that were the worst players in the game did verbally abuse other players, but especially the females. And the good players were more likely to be encouraging. And in poker, it's kind of like the chat is usually in poker games, it's really aggressive. And I think that usually when there are good players, usually they don't chat a lot, or when they chat, they are generally not aggressive. And of course, if you are thinking that you are working here, like you are playing poker as a profession, you wouldn't like to work in a place where everybody's shouting against each other. So in a way, that's also logical. This is a sad situation because there's a lot of hands that I would like to shove here, but I can't. And Danita says that it has happened twice on me that people have said that they saw me on a Poker Mania vid. That's awesome. I remember I think it was Spin and Goes, and we started like 4 or 5 Spin and Goes against one player. And I proceeded to drop the player out of three games, and on the fourth game he started on like, go back doing your stupid YouTube videos and leave the playing to those who can. And that was something that I remember on the feedback that you are getting. And of course, if you are asking a question and I didn't answer you correctly, because there is a lot happening. In general, when I had like 6 to 8 tables running at some points with these hypers, I probably have missed something. So if I don't respond to something or I don't give you a good answer, you can always ask the question again or ask for clarification. I know that I'm not doing the best job. In here, because of ICM, we can't call. This is also something that I probably should get out, but yeah, I do coaching as well. You can see my coaching style pretty much on the public-private coaching videos that we are having online. We should have, or I think that I have done something like probably close to 20 public-private coachings with different players, so there should be plenty of videos available on how do I coach. So I have a coaching announcement on our site, and I'll post the link. Of course, Deja was quicker. How did we get all in here? I was thinking about posting the link, and did I call this one? Then there's the other question, is that a good call or not? Let's see what happened here. When there is a 400 chip BB, I'm pretty sure that this is not a good call. I'll probably need to look on the video on why did I do this. Apparently I don't like money. That's quite worrying, because I don't believe that this was a good call. When I see that I dominate my opponent, so I think that this was a good call in regards of what happened. With the shorty, it was a bad call for sure. We can know how bad a call it was in a while, or after a while. Going to close Poker Stars and open up some calculators. And Danita, like, seems like you pressed some hotkey while typing something. Control C. Control C, so copy, but Control C is also call. I'm thinking that I have put all the hotkeys that I'm using with my mouse or joystick or whatever, I'm putting them all behind Control. But of course, Control C is not only a hotkey to copy something, it's also a hotkey to call. So, okay, now I know what happened. But let's see how big of a mistake I did. Now I'll need to also calculate that how many people need to get my coaching, and or how many people do you need to buy my coaching for it to be a profitable misclick still. Okay, with Holmes's calculator we can get the basic hand data up here. And Caleon says that it's bad, especially if BB has some brain activity. I think that we were having like 4 regs on the table at that moment. Like the shoving player was the only player that, or he was the only player that I wasn't sure that is he a reg or not. If we are looking at this, that if he's playing perfectly or if he's playing a perfect shove fold game here, with ace queen off we are losing about 3% of the prize pool, and when the prize pool is about $90, it's going to be about $2.7 off. It's going to be a mistake of about $2.7. So if I'm getting like a 5% odds to sell 1 hour of coaching with that misclick, that covers it. So, and Eki said that maybe you must change it to Alt, or maybe Control and Alt. Maybe use both because I'm never using the hotkeys here. And I must say that's the first time that has happened to me. That's the first time in quite a while. But let's see that how general ranges in this case are going to form. I think that in general people with large stacks are going to go wider than Nash Equilibrium. Even though in this case you'll see that if players are knowing what to do, you shouldn't go wider than Nash Equilibrium at any point, because our ranges should be quite well defined and show should be fills. So there's practically no use going much wider. But okay, if he goes too wide here, it's still going to be 2.2%, so it's going to be something like $2 of a mistake. It's still going to be a mistake that you don't want to do. Like, you are stupid if you are calling this bet, because in this case you are getting elimination about 60% of the time. Like, when we are thinking about 28% range that needs to, or when it goes to fill that needs to call with any 2 cards, 28% range is going to have something like 60-ish percentage equity against the range. So this is a one-time fail, and this is a very public fail. So it isn't that fun. I'm trying to think about how can I get, like, we got something like 20 games. We got something like 20 games for the session here. So here are the last 20 games for today. EV was pretty nice, almost $100 EV for playing a coaching session. That's going to be quite nice. And for buy-ins, it's something like plus 10 buy-ins. But with money-wise, it hasn't been that nice. It's like we started with 7 buy-ins and we finished with 7 buy-ins, so it's break-evenish in buy-ins, but we won more with the smaller stake games than we won with the larger stake games. And there is the Caleon's point that if big blind is a fish in that spot, it might be a lot better. Yeah, because if big blind is a fish in that spot, they are going to call with pretty hands. And if we are looking at the player that will call with pretty hands, then it will actually didn't change our equity at all. Our equity is with ace queen off is going to be exactly the same if we are getting called or not. But then there is going to be the other situation that the player is not going to, if he's a fishier looking player, he's not going to call with all of the hands he should, which should make it a bit better for us, hopefully. No. Having less eliminations happening is only going to make the situation worse for us. Worse for us. And Kauris says that one-time fail, congrats. It's usually when you fail, that's going to be a situation when you are improving. Like when I failed this, and now arrow sounds in my head that you have failed this city. But more like when I did this fail, then I'm going to improve my hotkeys that I don't do it again. So, and in this case, when it was a $15 game, even though I did a really stupid mistake, and I know it exactly, so it doesn't matter that much. It was only $2. But, but, there are some other hands from today that we'll want to take a look at. So, report. Hands report, so marked hands only. So I'm having here 4 hands. We are going through them with replayer first. To see what happened in the hands. First was this hand that Danita said that he wouldn't shove pocket deuces here. I think that in general that when we are at the Regi game, this is going to be an edge. It's not going to be a huge edge, but I think it's going to be an edge. So by shoving this hand, I think that we are winning something like 0.02 or 0.03. And it's because the average stack size is going to be so low in that situation. And this is going to be one of the important stuff that you are going to do is it's going to be really hard to develop in poker if you are just playing poker because there's so much variance in the game. And what happens in the game is usually going to what happens in the game is usually not that connected to did you do good or did you do bad. It's like if you are playing one sit and go, it's going to be almost all of the what happens in the final results will be luck. If you are playing something like let's say 200 sit and goes, I think it's going to be quite close that it's going to be what happens to do win or not is going to be about 50% skill and about 50% luck. And when we are going to go for something like 10,000 sit and goes, it's going to be all of it, if you are winning or if you are losing, is going to be all about skill. And in here, I think that can we edit any other ranges? I think that even the big blind range is going to be quite solid here and quite reasonable. Might be that pocket deuces are going to be a bad idea to shove here. Yeah, pocket deuces are probably a bad idea to shove here, and props for Danita for getting it out. And in general, the farther away we are from the big blind, so the more players there are behind us, it's going to be more. The closer to Nash equilibriums you usually need to be, because usually the more players there are behind you, the closer Nash equilibriums are also what people are really doing on the tables. And that's in a way that's funny because when the situation gets more complex, the results get to be more of a how to say it, results are more common sense oriented in those kind of situations. And also they are going to be like, if people are calling in those kind of situations, it's going to be a mentally easy call. Like, what I mean by a mentally easy call is that you are, when you call with your tight range, you are going to be ahead most of the time. So it's a call that makes you feel good. Yeah, in general, if we are thinking about 10 big blind stack depth, in general we can shove about every pocket pair. So then there is the next hand. This is the ace-3 hand that Grimpop asked that how did we get all in with this hand. And I shoved ace-3 off on UTG, and when this guy is a reg, I actually wonder if this is a profitable shove, especially when there is a short stack that is quite likely to call. I actually think that this ace-3 shove is probably going to be a bad shove, but ace-3 suited would be a shove for sure. Let's see what the almighty Hold'em Resources calculator will say about this. And in sometimes there are like, why did I deviate from Nash equilibrium for this Broa player? When his range is going to be quite wide to play against the UTG opener, I think that players in general are not calling as wide with short stacks as they should. So that's going to be a systematic error that's also happening with good players, that they are not calling as wide as they should when they are having short stack. And Kauris says that ace-3 off is a good shove, though. And in here, if we are having players that are playing perfectly, which requires quite tight ranges, ace-3 off is going to be minimally profitable or unprofitable. And that's also something that you need to think about. Like, if we are talking about that we are one or two hands away from the most profitable ranges and we are doing a mistake that is like 0.03% of the price pool, if we are taking it into context, like if this would be a $15 game and we would have a 90% $90 price pool, if we are thinking that the 3% mistake is a $2 mistake, this is a 2-cent mistake. And it's not going to be that important, like 41 game, that's like 0.1%. But when I looked at it later, like there are I think that with this risk, with this player being at the same table, I'm thinking that in general we could play this better by not shoving. This is a situation that we generally don't want to take thin shoves in. And this guy was random, that I think that is going to shove too little, but let's see, does it change things for us? Like with ICM, it's always going to be that every situation that happens behind you also affects your equity. But here we can see that these trees we are having something like 20 leaves, and this is a pretty simple hand to look at. So that's why the Hold'em Resources calculator and how it can calculate the best possible lines for people, it's going to be quite good, because it's usually the best possible lines. They are not going to be perfect, but I think that they are going to be pretty much as close as we can get to perfect situations in the games. And Kauris said that maybe it's a bad shove for HRC. There is not a good shove that's a bad or there are, but those are going to be where we are getting the limits of calculatability. We are hitting the limits on what can be calculated. That's going to be a more That's going to be something that's still hard to say, but it fits Finnish mouth a bit better. Yeah, I could probably give this guy a bit tighter calling range, but still I don't think that it would change things a lot in here. Oh, it brings the ace-3 off, but I'd say that the ace-3 off is going to be break-even at best, and we are risking most of our stack against big blind and all of our stack against the player next to us on the left side, so I don't think that this is going to be a good shove. We don't want to do break-even shoves here. This is the king 9 suited hand that this guy did do at least 2 calls that were pretty bad. I remembered. So I did a thin call here. I think that against the range that would be close to any 2 cards, king 9 suited will be profitable. But let's see. We have a good tool for it. So generally, when HRC is saying that some situation is profitable or not, usually it's going to be quite good. So HRC is saying that if VKIN is shoving 56%, then I should call with pocket sevens plus. And what did we see here? Jack 4 suited. It's going to be within the 56%. And king 9 suited would be minus 0.63% of the price pool. That's going to be actually quite a horrible call at that point. And then there is a sanity check that if our opponent is shoving any 2 or close to any 2, how does our calling range change? If our opponent is shoving any 2, then the king 9 suited is going to be mildly profitable. So there is an opportunity that it is profitable, but I think that it can't be profitable against this guy. We can look at like 3 different hands here, and we can look with Totem Resources calculator on when do they become profitable. Let's take something like ace-5 suited there as well, and pair of deuces will never be, so let's take something like pair of sixes. So what we are going to see with these hands, pretty much all of these hands are not going to be in the Nash range, but when we are zooming in, there are like, with the 70% range, 77%-ish range, king 10 suited becomes a call. Actually, like king 8 suited will never be a call. Pocket sixes will be a call with something like 77%. I think that these 2 hands, like king 10 suited and pocket sixes, I think those can be defended, but calling with ace 5 suited or king 9 suited in here, I don't think that those can be defended. I think that king 9 suited would be best folded here. And Danita says that sometimes when reviewing Hold'em Resources calculator, it feels like I change villains ranges to make my shoves good. And for Danita, a good tip that I know that you know how to do the population tendency analysis, it's going to be a good idea to look at the population tendency on what does the population do in a certain spot and use that to see which direction you are adjusting your ranges in the Hold'em Resources calculator. But it's nice, and I'd say that it's really good to see in these hands that the hands that people ask me to evaluate here, I have done mistakes in practically every single one of those. But why am I happy that I have mistakes in here? I'm happy that I have mistakes in here because it's going to be good for improvement. And it's also going to be good for you to see that even when you are doing mistakes, you can play poker for something like 100,000 games, and you can do solid winnings during that time. So even though you are doing mistakes, you can still win in poker, and probably nobody doesn't no probably there is nobody that doesn't do any mistakes. Well, maybe Phil Helmut, but we all know how that happens or how that goes. So in this case, Boku 87 shoved, VKI N9 called, and in this case there are two smaller stacks, and he had like 1200 chip stacks, so he wasn't in under any pressure, and he called with ace-4 off. So let's see how good of a call that was. This is a good ICM situation. Actually, he had a 1,400 chips, and like Nash equilibrium for Boku is shove everything. This must be pushed. But for VKI, this is going to be a shove for Boku, because 94% of the time, if opponent plays perfectly back at him, 94% of the time he's going to win the money there. And we can see here, which is actually going to be interesting, that ace-4 suited is about as bad of a call as ace-queen off was for me. And Kasperi said that OMG, I have watched many videos on how to use HRC and never figured out how to use it. Some kind of miracle happened, and now I get so-called aha, noihan se toimii. So, like, Heureka! This is how it works in English. You are welcome, Kasperi. So that's also going to conclude our session for today. I hope that this gave you some ideas on how to play the hypers. I think the 9max hypers, those are a quick game, those are a fun game, and as we saw at the like $1.5, $3.5, $7 level, I think that the lowest stakes are still going to be quite profitable. So I think that these games are going to be quite profitable also, especially when you are comparing that they don't take a lot of time to complete. Like if you can play the same amount of hypers, like if you are having a screen that you can fit 6 games at once, and you are thinking about playing hypers or turbos, if you can play 6 games at once of hypers and turbos, you're probably getting like 2.5 to 3 times more hypers than turbos. And thanks everybody that watched, especially thanks for everybody that chatted. It's always more fun to be here when you chatted. Thanks for also helping me plug some of my leaks, even though the leaks weren't big, but there's always room for improvement. And actually, I don't know what we are doing next week. Next week there will at least be Kyberi. What will Kyberi be in English next week? That is the question. Actually, I think that we are going to have 2 Finnish sessions in a row. And I'm not sure that can I do a session on Sunday. If I can do a session on Sunday, I will do it, and it will be on 6max hypers. So tune in during that time. And we are going to start thinking about our August program. So now it's only that if you are going to sleep, have a good night. And if you are playing poker, may this be a winning night for you. Bye!